everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of Unfiltered with Mia. So it's been a while. It's been a long while. Because let's say a lot has happened. I traveled back home, and I would say going back home actually kind of gave me a different perspective about many things, and I couldn't resist. And I thought, you know what? I need to share it with my audience. So, if you're ready to listen to my story and what I discovered while going back home, which will be very interesting, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people would relate to that. So, I'd recommend grab yourself a beverage of choice, cup of tea, cup of coffee. With me today is a cup of coffee. So here we are. I'm gonna grab myself my cup of coffee and let's get right into it. So I literally just got back home. So I was in Madagascar for a week and then I was in Mauritius for another week. So for those who are new to the channel, I am born in Madagascar and I'm half Mauritian. So my dad lives in Madagascar and my mom lives in Mauritius. So for me, home is both islands. Don't ask me to choose. I love my islands, both of them. So it's been a while. I'm not going to lie to you. It's been a while since I've had that feeling of needing to go home. And I remember before the whole situation happening in the Middle East, I had a call with my mom where I told her how much I felt this urge of going back home. Something was calling me and I just couldn't explain it. It was just a very strong feeling. But the reality is that I was escaping home for a while, and it did hit me when I finally got back home. I was quite aware of the situation. I was quite aware that I was running away. But there's a lot of things of why I felt this way. But going back home was a big realization. So let's start from the beginning. As you must have, if you've listened to my previous solo episode, I've mentioned many times how much obviously it was very uncertain, even though here in Dubai we're safe and I think the government did a great job about the situation. There was a lot of uncertainties in terms of the economy, in terms of career, in terms of myself, what I wanted to do. A lot of people was asking me, do you want to go back home? Are you staying in Dubai? And yes, my answer is I'm staying in Dubai because this is home. But also deep down, there was something that was calling me back home as well, my actual home. And during this time, I think from end of Feb until I decided to travel, which was mid of April, I didn't realize how much I was living in a fight and flight mode. I was literally in survival mode, not because of the situation that was going on. It's because of uncertainties. I'm someone who's very anxious. I was overthinking. And if all my friends would listen to that, they would be shocked kind of to understand that, because I was putting a smile on my face. I was going out. I was enjoying myself. But the reality is that behind that smile and behind of what you see in social media was someone who was extremely anxious. I was not sleeping. I think it's been over a month that I had a good sleep. I was sleeping late and I would sleep during the day. I was very groggy. Is this how you say it? Well, I was in a bad mood, put it like that. I was really depressed in a way, or I was actually starting into it. And I just didn't feel myself anymore, to a point where I was annoying myself. Do you know that feeling where you can see that you're not your true self and you annoy yourself? Well, that was me. And I felt lost. I felt like I needed to find myself again. And that was the moment where I had a conversation with my parents and I just told them, I need to go back home. I want to do a week in Madagascar and a week in Mauritius. And I just needed to disconnect completely. And I must say, that was the best decision I've done in 2026. Honestly, I needed this trip so much. It was so refreshing. It was so nice. I discovered another part of me I didn't knew about, or maybe I was hiding or running away from her. So I went back home, and I remember I was already anxious. To be honest with you, my close friends would know I was scared about going back home because I was like, I want to make sure I can come back to Dubai because obviously things was relatively uncertain. I didn't know if the airport was going to keep on going after 2 weeks. And I was like, I need to make sure I can come back to Dubai. So I left Dubai very anxious because I was like, I need to make sure I can come back, right? So anyway, very anxious. I go through my long trip, arrive, land in Madagascar. The first day was already not great because I lost my suitcase. I had two suitcases, and the most important one was clothing. It was the one that not lost, but it came late, put it like that. And I was like, great. So great start to the holidays. But a couple of hours later, we got a hook of it. And then I just felt completely different. Life was a little bit more slow over there. I was more present. I had so much quality time with my brothers because my brother now is like 13 years old. My little sister, she's 7. And just having laugh and conversation with them and looking at my siblings, and I'm like, do you remember that time when you were carefree? That's what I was exposed to. And it was a bit of a reminder for me to be more of a that carefree spirit, of like not worrying about what tomorrow holds and actually just living and having a day at a time. And another thing that was mesmerizing was the nature, watching the sunset. It was just beautiful. I was in the capital, which is quite congested, I'm not gonna lie, but still, just the scenery was so different. I felt so reconnected, and I think I needed that because there was important conversation that needed to be had with my father that was done, and I just loved it. I felt like I reconnected with that side of my family, with my roots. I needed to go there, and I felt loved like never before, and it was just so peaceful. So that was like part one of my trip, and realizing not just that, but during that part one of my trip, one thing I forgot to mention as well is um some of you might know, but I'm also working with an association back in Madagascar where basically you become a godmother of a kid and you pay for the school fees, etc. Now, I have a kid that I'm the godmother with, and one of the things that I wanted to do whilst being back home was to actually meet the kid. And so I prepared like a big goodie bag of things with like snacks, coloring books, coloring pencils, and all of that. And I went and I met her, and I met other kids as well. And that smile on her face, how sweet and adorable she was. But not just that, but the mother was with us as well. And the amount of gratitude that that mother had for these little things that for us is very little, but for them means the world, just shifted my perspective completely, because we are lucky to live in such a world and we have so many privilege. And then showing, like, seeing this and witnessing this made me just shift completely my perspective of like how much we worry about little things where other people are struggling way more than what we are struggling with, and we should feel privileged to have a roof on our head, to be able to live the life that we are living. So yeah, that was a very deep and emotional moment for me as well. I will try to put a picture of the little girl and me here, and I'm not going to put more pictures because just out of privacy for the rest of the kids and the families, I'm not going to put that, but I'll just try to put here because I want you to see how beautiful and how amazing she is. Now, right after that, obviously bittersweet to leave Madagascar. It felt so short, and I was like, I need more time. This is how it felt. But I then flew to Mauritius to see my mom. And that was another big, big realization and emotional roller coaster. I'm not going to lie. So, going back home in Mauritius, one of the first thing I forgot how beautiful this island is. Like waking up, seeing coconut trees, watching the blue sky, seeing the mountains, going to the gym and having such a beautiful scene to go to the gym to. Wow. And it was the little things that made the difference is sitting in the outside on the balcony, or not the balcony but the terrace, yeah, the terrace, and hearing the birds chirping, hearing the wind. That was little things that I was beyond grateful, and I cherish this moment, but also the quality time with my mom as well. And throughout this trip to Mauritius, I'm not gonna lie, there was something that happened, and even in Madagascar, there was something that happened in both countries that hit me a lot. Is I was getting hit by childhood memories. You know, it's the little things of like going to a place where I used to study, going to a place where I used to have to meet my crush when I was younger. Um, those little snack that I used to have when I was younger. There were so many moments during these both trips, where it brought me back to childhood, and I was like, wow, when I was younger, all I wanted to do was to run away from both islands, and that's what I want to share actually also with you guys. And I will be very open and vulnerable on this podcast. Like I'm usually on this every episode, I'm very honest, and this is another very honest and vulnerable one, where the reality is when I was younger, as bad as it may sound, but I never felt like I was fitting in both island. I was always my dad's daughter in Madagascar and my mom's daughter in Mauritius. I was not the best looking girl. I was always behind compared to other kids. And I just never felt like I fit in, you know, and I never knew what was me. I never knew who was actually Lamia, like who was she, you know? So I always had that urge of I had to run away. And I remember when I left Mauritius and Madagascar to go to the UK to go for my master's. Now that I remember a conversation I had with my mom where she was like, "Go and spread your wings and go and learn, go find yourself," you know. And I remember when I reached the UK, it felt like freedom, but that's where the real discovery about me happened. I always thought that I needed to get out. I didn't even want to be related somehow to my island when I was younger. I was like, oh no, I wish I came from a like a European countries or something. And that was something that I used to deal with when I was little. But again, that is a lot of not self doubt, but self criticism about myself and not feeling confident. And now I go back to my island, to my home places, right? And all I can see is beauty, gratitude, how gorgeous and how proud I am today to be someone who comes from Madagascar and Mauritius. Today I say it proudly. And honestly, it's such an honor to be an island girl, to have the privilege to come from both islands, to experience all the beautiful things I've experienced when I was younger, you know? And it completely shifted. Now, one thing that I want people to understand, running away is not always a bad thing, because hear me out on this one. If I didn't leave my island, I don't think I would have ever become the woman that I am today. I needed to leave. I needed to go. I needed to find myself. If I never left my island, the reality is maybe I would have never started this podcast. Maybe I wouldn't be who I am today. Today, I'm a very different person. And people can tell when they see me, when they meet me after years, they can see the shift, because the reality is that going on my own journey, living in the UK, coming here to Dubai, I've learned so many things about myself, about the world. My way of thinking is very different. And it kind of like gave me that little click when I was having conversation with people that I knew from before, where I was being told, "Oh my God, you've become mature. I like your way of thinking." And I was like, right. Yes, it did feel like an escape, but the escape was required for me to grow, for me to become who I am today. But that being said, I am done running away. And that's the reality. And I was like, I am absolutely done, because going back to my roots helped me to ground myself. I was able to breathe. I was able to regulate my nervous system all over again. I was able to switch off completely and just be present. It's the little things, that being present. It's I live alone here in Dubai. Yes, I have amazing friends around me, which I'm extremely grateful for. Um, but it's the little things, like having dinner with your loved ones at a table, exchanging a conversation with your loved ones. It just hits differently, because I didn't know how much I needed that until I got back home. Because I'm still so used to live by myself, having my meals by myself at the time of the day that I want. Don't get me wrong, I love that. But it's just so different when you sit down at the dinner table and your mother or your father is across the table. You're sharing a meal, you're having a conversation, talking about the day, having a laugh. Same with my siblings. I don't know if for you guys you can understand how much that meant. And it almost makes me emotional just thinking about that, because the reality is that I don't get that here. Yes, I have amazing support, I have amazing friends, but it's these little things, you know? So I would say one thing that I've learned was that I always avoided to go back home. When people would talk to me about trips, I would be like, oh, I want to go to XYZ country, which is still the case. But I do want to go back home more now, because another thing that did hit me is how much life can change in a time lapse. Like how much my parents are growing old, how much the islands are evolving, are getting better and better. And I'm like, wow, I am proud to see how they're growing, how they're bringing new ideas, and they're trying to reach that. They're, it's just beautiful. So for me, it's definitely one thing that I've learned as well, is that it's very important to go back to the roots. And it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. You need that, because that's where you're from, It's spending more time with your parents, because time flies. We have this tendency to think that our parents will live forever. And I think everyone can relate to that. We want that. We want our parents to live forever and be there for us forever. But the reality is that there will come a time, and listen, touch wood, that doesn't happen anytime soon, but you never know. Life is unpredictable. That's one thing we've learned in 2026. And I think I've learned a long time ago, but it was quite like prominent in 2026. So spend time with your parents, spending that quality time, put that phone away, switch it off, and have a conversation. One thing I loved, and I did it with my mom, is we were playing cards. So we'd get on with our day, blah, blah, blah. And then in the late afternoon, evening, we'd sit down outside, and then we would be playing cards. And just that felt amazing. It's just a wholesome moment that will stick here now more than ever. The same way when I got back home and I remembered the little memories of when I was younger, the same way now when I'm going to go back, I'll be like, oh, I remember that time when I was just playing cards with my mom. These are wholesome things. And these are things that you will not, that has no price, first of all, and you don't know until when you have it. So make most of that. Now, bear with me a minute because I did make some notes and I want to make sure I did tackle everything in my in this episode, because I truly believe that a lot of people can relate and understand, because the reality is that we're all expat here, right? And you tell me, have you ever felt like you needed to escape your roots? Write it down in the comments while I go through my notes to make sure that I've mentioned everything. I hope while I'm being quiet, you writing down. If you want to share anything, guys, please. I actually like reading my like reading the comments. So please feel free to jot down anything that you can take. Do you relate? How do you feel about that? Right? So, right. So I guess one more thing that I want to add, and I think I've mentioned it, is that obviously I've talked about how it's important to leave, to grow, to become who you need to become, which is true. But one thing that I actually wrote here, and I think it means a lot, and it needs to also be put out there, is that yes, we are always in the search of the true version of ourselves, the best potential of ourselves. But the reality is that your roots are always here, and you need to, like, I remember when I started this whole my whole healing journey, because I had a lot of things to heal on, and I'm still healing. It's still a process. But the reality behind that is that I thought that running away would make the healing better. Trust me, when after you've done a couple of therapy sessions, for me it was like I want to disconnect, because most of the things that would trigger me were things from the past. So for me, my island, or where I come from, my family, was triggers. And I thought the more I would run away, the more it would be better. But it's a bit like this metaphor of, like, when you have a wound and you just put a plaster on it and you think that, okay, it will heal. But the reality is that you need to remove that plaster and allow the wound to heal naturally. So it's the same kind of metaphor, where running away is like putting a plaster on the wound, and going back and actually having those conversations, having those moments and reliving and kind of making peace. I think what I've done by going back home is that I have made peace with my past. And I know that in my past there was a lot of things that was triggering, but now that I am aware of it, I come and have a different approach about it, and I tend to appreciate the good thing and disregard the negative things. And as I always say, we always have a choice in life. So you choose what you want to consume and you allow in your life, and whatever you don't want, you have the choice to disregard it, or actually put a healthy boundary on it. And that's exactly what I've done while going back home. I listened, I paused, I observed, I gave time to the people that I wanted to give time, and I disconnected, or I put a boundary with the people that I just didn't want in my energy at that time. And it is fine. It's absolutely fine. And it's so nice, when you go back home and you have that change of perspective, when you're so aware of everything, it kind of hits you. And I needed that. I think I needed that to be able to continue in this journey. I needed to heal that part. I needed to have those rough conversation, but I also needed to feel the love that I've always like wanted from my family. So all in all, I must say it was so nice. And guys, I slept. Like, I've been sleeping good since I've been back home, and I've been loving it. These little things that you're just grateful, those love, being more present, are the food. Oh my God. A moment of appreciation for the food. Guys, I devoured everything that I wanted. all my cravings was ticked off because I ate, like, from your seafood to your meat to your fried to your whatever you can think about, whatever I was craving, I got it. And I was so happy. Oh my God, trust me, my soul is so happy and feels so good right now that I'm just like, right, let's go get it, you know? And now that I've made peace with that side, now I know that if ever I ever feel overwhelmed and anxious or overstimulated, guess what? I can go back home and I'll be just fine, you know? Because I always had that fear of like, oh my God, I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home. I felt trapped. I felt like I would never be able to express myself. And the reality is that I can do it, you know? So yeah, I kind of like that, you know? And then I had a question that a lot of people ask me. Do I think I could leave back home forever? Would I think of going back home forever and leave Dubai? I don't know. The reality is I don't know because I love my life here in Dubai. I love the fact that obviously my freedom, the fact that I'm in security, my friends, and there's a lot of things about Dubai that I love. But now that I've made peace with that side of me as well, I just love it as well because I'm thinking of home with a different perspective, you know? Would I live there forever? I don't know. In the best of both worlds, I would be able to live between all the three countries. So Dubai, Madagascar, and Mauritius. Let's see. Let's see. I'm putting it out there. Now let's see what tomorrow brings, you know? And I guess that is me done for this solo episode. I hope it made sense for you guys because for me it made sense. And I wanted to share that because I was like, it's such a vulnerable share. I thought twice before sharing it, but I was like, no, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people could relate. So here I am being super vulnerable once again. And here are a few things that I'll have to read it because I put it down just to make sure that I don't forget. To end this episode, I think to wrap up and kind of summarize everything that I've mentioned, here's a few things that this trip of reconnecting with my roots made me realize and brought to me. So the first one is that this trip reminded me that grounding is important, that peace is important, that love, family, present, simplicity, these things matter more than we realize. And maybe healing isn't always about becoming someone new. Maybe sometimes it's about reconnecting with who we were before the world hardened us. And for the first time in a very long time, home didn't feel like a place I needed to escape from, but it felt like a place that healed me. So yeah, the little Lamia would be so proud of the woman that is now. So yeah, I would say the little Lamia would be so proud of the woman that she's becoming and she became. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like the little me could see the now me when I was back home, and it was really emotional and it was really nice. So yeah, I guess this is it for today's episode. Thank you for listening. And I hope that my message has touched any one of you listening. And on that note, I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.